there, 420 MSP. Harry here, having that cup of coffee out here back in Seattle. And down in Southern California, we have George Sadler from Platinum back. Sir, welcome back.
Thank you.
Today's a fun conversation. Last time we highlighted some of your industry observations and some forward-looking statements. Today, I wanted to do just the opposite. I want to go back to the beginning, and we're going to play What's Your Story? So it's a good one. So tell us how you started and end with where we're at today. Go, sir.
Where we're at today. So I guess we just want to start from the beginning, right?
We do. So you were born.
Well, I'll take you back 30 years then.
Okay.
Now,
Cheers.
so yeah, I mean, I appreciate, once again, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me ramble on. Going back, not too far, but far enough to kind of set the pace for things. I owned a flooring company for 16, 17 years, and sold that. Got into drive-through coffee. Had a couple here in Southern California, and then I moved back to Michigan, where I'm originally from, and started drive-throughs out there, and started manufacturing and selling them across the Midwest. Ended up with building a restaurant, which I'd never even worked in the restaurant, but built a restaurant from the ground up in a small town, Ludington, and was pretty successful on that end of it. Unfortunately, sometimes hard work ends up in divorce, and so ended up divorced. And I came back to California. My father had a electrical company that he had for 38, 39 years, and he was in that position where he was ready to start winding it down. And so I came in as the vice president and helped him over the period of 2 years to wind his business down. And in that process, my oldest son, Cody, which was in college at the time, and he was working for us at the electric company, he came into my office, and I think it was his last year of college, and asked me if I ever thought about growing marijuana. And and I said, man, this much money and this many years in college, and you're going to do something that doesn't require any of that. So I was kind of caught off guard, and we talked about it for a while, and at that time, things were pretty sketchy. That was 2010 at that time, and so I knew how he was in the direct and the drive that he had. As he was talking, I knew he was going into this, and there was no way I was going to change that. So I said, well, let's do this together. So I told him everything has to be as legal as possible. So that's what we did. We formed our first corporation, which was Nature's Leaf, and he side by side with me on learning how to do that. And then from there, we proceeded to build a grow in our garage. And we took we were big on motorcycles and dirt bikes, and we sold our dirt bikes, and I explained to him that in a partnership, it's the percentage is what you put in, and I gave him the options on percentages of what he wanted to be in that company, and he said 50-50, and I said 50-50 means 50% money, 50% labor, 50% down the line. And that's exactly what happened. He contributed. I've never had to give him a loan. I've never had to ask him for money. It's always been 100% upfront on that. So we went from there, and we had never grown anything. And just like most people, we YouTubed how to grow marijuana. And and ironically, we ended up with a system that we fell in love with, which was deep water culture. And we ended up with a guy out of Canada, the hardest system you could ever imagine growing through, and somehow we ended up doing it. And it wasn't pretty. we built out everything ourselves, and to this day, I don't know how we ended up with the harvest that we did. It was 6 plants, 6 lights, and the system was absolutely crazy. But we ended up with an amazing harvest for our first one. So here we are now, we're harvested and have a bunch of marijuana sitting there in our garage, trimming hours and hours, and thinking that we just made, $3 million when it was nothing like that. Problem was at that time, there wasn't a lot of brick and mortar. Most everything was delivery service. They had shut down at that time. They'd shut down, all the unlicensed stores. So we said, okay, we're gonna just start calling up delivery services off of Weed Maps, and we started calling, and we had really good marijuana, and we would call a delivery service, and basically the first 10 just hung up on us. Everybody thought that we were cops, and at that time that was kind of the way things were. So,
and George, quick question: is this back in the state of Michigan, or is this now in California?
California, yeah.
Okay, please continue. Thank you.
Yeah, so we realized pretty soon on that we couldn't get a meeting with anybody in a delivery service, and we were sitting with a bunch of marijuana and a bunch of bills for power and everything else, and we needed to do something. So the next thing we figured out was, hey, we're gonna have to do a delivery service. So we got a number 12 spot on Weed Maps, and we started Nature's Leaf Delivery. We didn't get one phone call, I think, for probably 4 or 5 days, and we sat every day waiting for that call. Fast forward in the next 4 to 6 months, we had gone by the Domino's Pizza motto, an hour or less, no matter what it takes. And 6 months later, almost to the day, we were doing 80 to 100 deliveries a day. We were in a new office. There's a lot of things that take place in that timeline that I could literally talk to for hours just going into that. But a lot of things took place. We expanded our grow into a large scale grow, and delivery service was just going absolutely crazy. And then, fast forward another 4 months from there, and we opened our first store in Oceanside. And first store in Oceanside was kind of like the delivery service. We thought we made a mistake, and then later on we figured out that that store was quite successful.
George, for my audience, where is Oceanside? Is that kind of San Diego, LA? Where is that?
Yeah, it's between, if you call it, between San Diego and LA. So it's north of San Diego, Del Mar. It's about 20 minutes north of Del Mar, and it's about 20 minutes south of San Clemente and whatnot. So yeah, so we started that first store, and then that started to take off, and we just carried our motto of making sure that everybody was happy and giving everybody the best that we could at a fair price. And then 4 months after that, we literally opened up 3 more stores, all within a week to 2 weeks of each other. And we opened up one in Pacific Beach, Chula Vista, and La Mesa, and we ran the stores. And then that's when Open Vape came into play. Open Vape had just kind of come out with the concept of vaping cannabis, and it didn't do so well in the beginning, but we worked together with those guys to distribute the product the best that we could through our stores. So we did basically a 50-50 deal with them, where we bought and they gave. So whatever we bought, they gave the same amount, and we gave it away. And it's crazy because the product back then was black. It was tar. It burnt. It smelled like tires, but everybody loved the concept to be able to conveniently vape, and it took off. And we got to a point where we were we were purchasing $50,000 to $60,000 of vape cartridges a week to sell in our stores. As we go on, it got to the point where we could not run our cultivation and the stores at the same time. So we got rid of the cultivation side, continued with the stores. The problems that we were having in the vape market, we saw nobody else was there at the time, and there were a lot of problems. And that's when Cody and I decided that we were going to start manufacturing oil. So we literally, and it's not even a joke. Cody found a company, a factory on Alibaba that manufactures the cartridges and the batteries. And within a week of that, Cody and I were on an airplane going to China. On the airplane, I think it's 15 hours, 16 hours. We came up with the name Platinum Vape, and doing one of those search engine things to, search a name. And so we came up with Platinum Vape. And before we landed, we came up with not only the name, but then life is better in platinum. And we got to China and we spent a week there, made our first products. And then, I would fly back for to make sure that everything was good before it shipped, and then spend a little bit of time back and forth in China. We started Platinum Vape, and we hired a chemist from SDSU, San Diego State, and we had a little small extraction room in the back of one of our stores, and we started off with a small benchtop Apex machine, and kind of were trying to figure it out. And back then, everything was proprietary. People were just getting into the market and trying to figure out how to make the best oil, and nobody was giving out secrets on any of it. So we struggled through that, and fast forward a little bit further from there, when we launched, everything was good. We hired a chemist from he was from Indiana. He was working in Indiana in a Trillium plant, which is heart medication, PhD from Purdue. And we flew him out for a week, and he kind of perfected what we were doing. And then we made him an offer, and we moved him back to California, and he worked for us, and brought on another chemist, which was actually working up in Stanford. And then they perfected a system that we had for ethanol extraction. And it was kind of the first phase of the cryo side of doing the extraction. And so we had our own method there. We went from that, where we were doing really well. We had a few hiccups when you were getting certain lots of trim and trying to figure out how to mitigate those problems. And at that time too, which is really kind of cool on our part, is that we've always maintained testing from day one, and understanding that that's really super important, because when you take something in a large volume and it's already a problem, and you then extract it down into a concentrate, you've only concentrated that problem. That's and so we understood that, and kind of thankful for the fact of that our chemist was really knowledgeable on that side, and they did not want to have any negative problems as far as that goes with us in the future. So we started testing early on, and that was kind of the start of that. We ran into a few problems, and we kind of worked through those, and then we took this building that we're in now, and we were using that for our base for our stores, and so offices and whatnot. And then the back of that facility, we opened up an extraction, and that was our first large scale, about 5,000 square feet, and built that out. About 20 guys working back there full time, 7 days a week, doing extraction. And then we sold the stores and went 100% in to just Platinum Vape. Everything was good. We then got raided.
Huh.
And
Wow.
yeah,
I
and
didn't see that one coming.
nah,
Let me take another sip of coffee on that one, brother.
I didn't see that one either. But yeah, I mean, I'm a pilot, and and it was business as usual, and I had taken a friend out, and we flew over to San Clemente, and did our thing, and I came back, and we were I actually parked by our lab, and we were walking up, and I started noticing one car after the other coming through, and then one thing that I kind of caught on to was that they were all wearing the same jacket. And it's not hard to see, the DEA sign. And so yeah, ironically, we got raided, and I went to jail for a night.
Oh, a night.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They they took my car from here. They took they took our records, and there wasn't anything here that they had found other than some cartridges, because everything was up in the front of the office, and so they didn't get much, to be honest with you. But and then 2 weeks later, they raided both of our houses, and that's it's kind of horrible to see how people behind a badge can really be, and these guys, they're really ruthless. And at that time,
Yeah.
my wife was I was actually in Costa Rica at the time. My wife was in the shower, and literally in the shower, and they my son had left the door open, so they didn't have to break the door down at the house, but they came upstairs, and
Whoa.
yeah,
I can see where this is going.
did the whole, let me see your hands, and she literally was taking a shower, and then they asked her to get out, and she said she was going to rinse off, and they were like, that wasn't going to happen, but she did it anyways. But I mean, they literally, it was 3.5 minutes, I think, is what's on tape, where they stood there. They wouldn't give her a towel, and it's all on their cameras. It was 3 male officers.
I was gonna say, I'm assuming it was males.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and they stood there for over 3.5 minutes, and would not give her a towel, and she was literally naked. And it's just it's embarrassing to think. And once again, they didn't get anything. There was nothing at my house. They took some jewelry, and they took a motorcycle out of my garage. And it just, I don't know. It's just, it's one of
Well,
those things.
George, what was the basis for the raid? Were you, I'm just going to make a couple, did you not have a license? Were you tardy in your taxes? I'm just
No,
making this up.
no. So, at that time, there were no license. Everything was medical. So we were following those guidelines. And I can tell you, we have paid our taxes from day one, and that was important for my son to understand. And trust me, there were times sitting in front of a pile of money and going, okay, this is going to taxes. And my son's looking at me like, are we crazy? Um, you know, but we've always paid the taxes. And I think down the road, that's where I always want him to understand, like, you'll see the benefits of this as much as it hurts. So no, there was no taxes, no issues. And actually what happened was, when they served the warrant, there was a name on the warrant that I didn't know on the warrant. And my attorneys came down here immediately while all this was going on. And it turns out that the company, the person that we got our trim from for extraction, had also been raided, and they thought this was one of their facilities, but our names were on there because whatever homework they had done. But he was the main person on the raid, on the warrant. And so we got raided on the back of their issue, and it came true to me when I'm sitting in jail at about 2 o'clock in the morning because they're constantly moving you around in the jail. And this guy comes walking in towards the end, and it's like, what are you doing here? And that's when I found out that it was because of that. And then they went to our houses. They took the ring, my son's engagement ring, off of his fiance's finger. They literally took it off of her finger. But I mean, the good news is that a year almost to the day, we got everything back. They wouldn't give us the cash. They took about $7,500 out of a safe that I had, and they didn't claim it. And somehow the video got lost when they had gotten into my safe through my wife. And so yeah, so we got everything back and no charges.
George, what year was this? Just so I can keep it
4
straight.
years. This was 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So we were rated on the back of one of our suppliers for our trim. And so what happens from there is, fast forward almost a year to the day, and we are receiving everything back.
Yes, sir.
And no charges filed.
Okay.
And I think also that was a turn in cannabis too, at that time, where they really understood that they could not prosecute somebody for just cannabis. So they did their due diligence, and they, of course, they wanted to go through and check us on our taxes and everything else, and who we came back, and that's what I told my son. I said, this is why you pay your taxes. So so the ironic thing is that a short period of time after that, our attorneys came to us and said, hey, guess what? Your facility fits in the zoning for licensing. So we were the first application basically in California for manufacturing, and we got our license. So we ended up licensed here, and then we just we took that time for licensing, and we completely shut down, and we rebranded the old Platinum Vape, which was the black and gold and the typical cannabis, kind of a darker thing, to
I know.
what you see behind me, where we went to bright colors and gradients, and and we kind of we looked at it as like, this is the new era for cannabis, and people thought we were crazy.
Well, and you know what, George, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going to make a side note. Next quarter, when we talk to you, if you don't mind, I want to check in with you periodically, but let's talk about branding and image and messaging next quarter. You've hit on another podcast.
Yeah, don't get me going on branding.
Okay, all right, not today.
Yeah.
Not today. No, today we're playing What's Your Story?
Yeah, when we do that, you're going to need 2 cups of coffee.
All right.
Yeah, so we made that switch and rebranded and pulled back from all the stores, and that cost us a ton of money, but we wanted this to happen. And the licensing took a little bit longer than we anticipated, but it allowed us to really get a foothold on our brand and understand. So we really went deep into branding, which is a whole other segment of what you want to talk about. And then so a year and a half ago, we relaunched Platinum. Actually, it's closer to 2 years now. We relaunched Platinum Vape, and I'll kind of rewind, because in that timeline when we were shut down in California getting licensing, we had been buying some properties in Michigan because the properties were so cheap out there.
Right.
And so my son thought I was crazy, but I said, it's real estate. So we bought about 27 properties over a period of about a year and a half out there, and we got really good deals on them. And in that timeline, I noticed that there was a need, because they didn't have cartridges out there. That you had they had cartridges, but you had to fill them yourself. So you could buy a syringe, fill your cartridge, and then just have a battery. So I went out there and partnered up with somebody on a cultivation side and said, let me purchase all your trim and we'll figure this out. We started a small extraction out there and went into filling. And when I first started walking, it's a predominantly Chaldean market in Michigan. And growing up in the Chaldean community and friends, it made it a little bit easier for me, but still, as a big white guy, they just sometimes they don't take to that too well. But I literally walked around Detroit with a tub full of platinum vapes and store to store physically myself, and got my first orders in. Took me about probably 3 weeks, and fast forward 4 years from that time, and we had went from nothing to doing 50 something million in vapes in Michigan. And yeah, and it's
everybody likes a comeback story, man. This self-made comeback story. This is a good one.
I don't want to make it sound easy, because it's the hardest work I've ever done, and the team that we have out there, my daughter and my son, Maddie and Nathan, they run Michigan, and it's incredible to be able to have that side of it. But we have a huge team out there and fully licensed in Michigan, and to do those numbers is crazy, but that's where the self-funding comes in, for the next phase of us and Platinum Vape and where we're at and kind of where we're going. And, we've been fortunate that we haven't had to take any money from anybody. By all means, we don't come from money. We're not rich people. And even to this day, we're not rich. We really dedicate everything to this company, and we live very simple. My son and I are next door neighbors in a small subdivision. Small houses, a 5-house subdivision on a cul-de-sac, and it's a 2,000 square foot house. We literally drive the same trucks, and but we put everything into this company. And now I think the numbers now, we just launched in Oklahoma. We're getting ready to launch Nevada in the next month and a half, 2 months, and we purchased a new building for Platinum Vape south of where we're at now. That's just getting going under license, so we'll be moving. We're pretty excited about that. It'll be our own building, and we'll be moving that probably in the next 4 to 6 months, and just growing. And it's the thing is I think right now, we kind of touched on it the last time, is that this is a real trying time for cannabis, and I think as I said, 2020 is the filtering year. Yep. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of companies, a lot of good companies too, that are not going to make this next hump here. I feel pretty strong about where we're at. I feel pretty secure about where we're at. And, my son, Cody, he drives the financial side of this company. I don't touch any money at all. He handles all the money side of this, and I handle all the marketing and the rest of the stuff. And we do a lot of this stuff together, but we're pretty excited. Honestly, you look at what's going on, and I honestly think, and I know we talked about it a little bit, but I think if there was ever a time to get into cannabis, it's now. Mm-hmm. That's my belief. And that's what's making us more excited. And don't get me wrong, it's a tough time, and we're dealing with a lot of things right now with a lot of companies that are struggling. But man, what a great pleasure to be able to be in this industry now. And people go, "Oh, you've been in it." Yeah, I don't. There's you don't get a badge for being rated. There's no merit to be able to say, that you went to jail for cannabis, and if I could take it all away, I would. And I can tell you, I can assure you that I've never been careless in any way, and having my family being a part of this, some people, especially back in the day, would say, you're really careless, and how could you put your family in that position? And I can assure you that that was never the case. But I can tell you that I would not give up any of this, and
Yeah.
anything that's happened. Could I do it again? I mean, you hear that. I can say I don't think that I could. Really, I could, but I don't know that I'd want to.
Yeah.
This is you're talking, 2011 to now, and there's so much work. People just see this and think, oh, you're $60-70 million company, and it just happened overnight. I can assure you, I've been in a lot of businesses, and this by far is the hardest business, hands down.
I'll tell you what, let me in pilot speak, if you don't mind, let me bring this plane in for a landing. I mean, that's a good place to hand off. Now, folks, let me put it in perspective. We've done the interviews in reverse order. The original interview up on the 420 MSP side is a forward-looking view, which is kind of where we're leaving it here, and then now we're going backwards to play What's Your Story? George, here's what I take away. Because the people who are viewing this are entrepreneurs, primarily in the tech space. But what I really like is you lived within your means. You started, and you have a modest house and modest cars, and a lot of people forget that on the way up and start living outsized. The other takeaway about, and it really goes back to our prior interview, but with the hype and now the trough, and we're then going to have a steady industry, stable industry. People that start now, it's akin to UPS started in Pioneer Square in Seattle back in the horse and buggy days, and a depression, a recession. Intel started in a recession. Those are the companies that tend to make it long term, right? If you started out in hard times, you learn how to live within your means, if that makes sense. And just, we're not in hard times, but there is a market correction, as you say, a filter in 2020, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, all right, my friend. Well, we're going to get you back next quarter. I made a note for branding. I'm sure we won't have dead air time.
We might not have enough, but it won't be dead.
All right. Take care, George. Thank you very much.
Thanks again. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Bye.